So Shazam, Captain Marvel. This is the other Captain Marvel. Dark Horse Comics will come out with the other Captain Marvel.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we usually democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to come on talking about a movie that means something to them, whether it's something they grew up with or something that really speaks to them. It could be an older film or a new release, etc., etc. But this week, we're doing a special report for the new DC film Shazam. Basically, for a couple of reasons. One, it's starting to feel like DC is starting to get their shit together, and that in and of itself is an interesting conversation. And two, we don't want people listening to this podcast to think we're Marvel or DC biased. We like superhero films all across the board. So, of course, another Captain Marvel movie kind of comes out. We want to talk about it. And who better to talk about superhero cinema than the original co-host of the Crooked Table Podcast, Freddy Yaniz. Welcome back again.
Hello. It's good to be back. It's me, Freddy.
Welcome back. So we're going to be talking Shazam this episode. But before we do that, I want to take a step back. So previously on the podcast, usually either me and Kai or me and you, I don't remember if we really talked DC film very much. It seems like our conversations tend to lean more towards the Marvel side of things.
Yes. Yeah, I don't believe we have. Usually we talk about Marvel, but since DC is trying to put better content out,
right? I
think maybe you'll find us talking about DC.
Yeah, maybe finally.
Often.
Well, that's the thing. Is that Marvel, and this is what I've always said, just to get the Marvel comparison thing out of the way before we move into this, because that's kind of inevitable whenever you talk about a Marvel or a DC movie these days, with the warring factions of fans, and that's been going on forever. But Marvel, to me, has always been more consistent. You know what I mean? Like, very few of their films that I would say are exceptional. Like, I feel like the MCU has maybe one or two films that are even close to the level of something like The Dark Knight, but they're consistently solid. Like, they're consistently good. You know, and there's an ongoing arc that's carrying over 22 films, and
they've perfected the superhero movie template.
Right, and it's very much a template, a formula.
Yeah, especially in the earlier stages where it was all origin stories, and also it was all. They already had a larger story in mind as well,
right.
So it makes it more interesting to interconnect those stories, and it makes it more enticing to the viewer, and it makes them want to come back to see the next chapter of that story, even if it is another superhero within their line.
Even if it is an Ant-Man sequel for some reason, the world never even knew they wanted one Ant-Man movie, let alone two. And I mean, let's be realistic, most likely three.
Yeah.
But Kevin Smith always, because I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith and his podcasts and his movies and so much these days, but he always calls the MCU his stories. Like his mom had like her soap opera, her stories, and that's very much for people like us that enjoy these kinds of stories. That's like an ongoing soap opera. It's like, oh my god, and now Bucky's in Wakanda. What's gonna happen? It's like, tune in next time. The Captain America will return. That kind of thing. And I've always been very hesitant to discount DC. A lot of film critics see what Marvel's doing, and they see how successful they are critically and financially, and how they've been able to create this massive canvas that's maybe not as creatively ambitious, but has a sense of consistency and all that stuff. Because DC, they try things, whether it works or not. And lately, up to this point, the DCEU is in very all over the place. But like Batman v Superman, it's very hard for me to write that off as like a garbage film, like a lot of people do, because it's has a scope to it. It has a level of intricacy with the details and the way Zack Snyder shoots things and things like that. So there are visions at play. They just don't stick the landing.
I think and a huge thing with the DC universe is with their movies, they try to pack so much content within a movie because they're over ambitious. They want the the movie to be like at Avenger level.
Right, right out the gate. The second one
right out the gate,
they're like,
yeah.
all right, and they're all here.
But
like,
you have to start the foundation first before you start, making those level of movies.
Right.
And even on an Avenger level film, they wouldn't have that much content in it because you lose the story and you lose the character development along the way.
Right.
And, X-Men Last Stand is a huge. That's a huge superhero movie.
3 or 4
wrong.
movies combined. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what they were doing for the longest time. That's what they did with Justice League.
Right.
Primarily.
You don't
Batman v Superman also. They did that.
You don't build a house from the roof down. You got to establish the only superhero characters that really everyone knows the origin story of are Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. I would say that's everyone else you have to set up some kind of who are they? What's their backstory? You know what I mean? Everybody knows Superman came from Krypton, his planet blew up, Batman's parents died, Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider and his uncle got shot. Everybody knows those things. Nobody has any idea who the hell Star-Lord is. Or, honestly, a lot of people don't know who the Flash is, really, other than he runs fast. Yeah. And it's better now because of the TV show and things like that. Like the DCEU shows have been helping with some of the brand awareness part of it. But for the most part, nobody knows who Cyborg is. Nobody knows who Aquaman is. And yet you bring them into BVS or Justice League and we're supposed to give a shit. I give a shit because I want to see... I have a little more familiarity, but even then, and it's a testament to the fact that they need to take things slow, that the movies that have worked thus far, and we should say this is the sixth in the DCEU. So you have Man of Steel, really solid movie. I still really like it, even though people shit all over the ending. I think they need to chill out. I think the fact that they... it is a little overblown in the third act, but they use that for BVS to kind of fuel that story. Mm-hmm. Batman v. What are your thoughts on Man of Steel? We'll just go through up to this point real fast.
I thought Man of Steel was a solid restart of the DC brand,
right?
And it was a little bit lengthy, but I think that
Zack Snyder.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would put that as one of my tops of the DC for sure.
Same.
Maybe number 3 or 4.
4th place in the 6th?
Maybe 3. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll do that We'll do that in a second. So Man of Steel, strong opener, I think. A lot of people disagree, but whatever.
Yeah.
BVS, not as strong.
Has its good moments.
Have you ever seen the Ultimate Edition, the longer one? It's full 3 hours.
No.
I think that's a much better movie, but I also think The Watchmen Ultimate Cut is a much better movie, even though I love the original theatrical version. Mm-hmm. It expands on a lot of things. And at BVS, it was one of those really frustrating experiences for me, and I talked about this on the podcast, where you'll see a scene that's really beautifully handled. We've seen the Waynes die a million times, but the way that Zack Snyder shoots it, I think is exquisite, and I know people like to...
Didn't they have the...
Well, it's like a close-up on the gun.
They had the gun trigger pull back and break the pearls.
And the slow motion with the kid falling into all of that. I love all that shit. I eat up that Zack Snyder goodness.
Well,
not all his movies are great, but he's a very visual storyteller.
Yeah, and that works for comic book movies specifically.
Exactly, which is why 300.
300, yeah. You could see that drawing of the gun pulling back, doing the pearls as that shot.
Right.
As at the top of the gun. That's a beautiful comic strip.
Right. And I don't mean to take so long on this building up to Shazam, but I think we're going to talk about Shazam as the centerpiece, but it also bears kind of tracing the DCEU steps that led to this point and how it's been such a roller coaster for people like us that follow all these things. And then we had Suicide Squad, which I think is universally considered the worst of the bunch. I would say that movie is ostensibly a mess from start to finish, save for Margot Robbie's, Harley Quinn and a couple moments here and there. But quick thoughts on Suicide Squad?
I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was an interesting take to go from the villain side, kind of. But other than that,
it feels like a Guardians of the Galaxy.
I've only seen it the one time.
Right.
I haven't even seen it. Than that.
I own it, but I'm a completionist, so I own all of them. Yeah. It feels like it's trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy and failing miserably, which is why it's funny that James Gunn ended up signing on for the sequel / reboot, whatever the hell the Suicide Squad is going to be. And you know, it's the whole James Gunn thing it's really funny the way that all worked out. But I think it works out for the best for both DC and Marvel, because now we both get new movies. Well, yeah, and now we both get DC and Marvel fans both get 2 films from James Gunn in like ensemble, and he has a very distinctive storytelling voice, and I think he'll definitely write that. Like, you know, the DCEU is very much in a course correction phase, and I think James Gunn's the right person to get Suicide Squad back on track, because I agree with you. There's a lot of promise in that concept, and I just don't think it was executed very well. There was David Ayer in the studio. There were a lot of too many hands in that film that it was. I mean, there's been reports that it was edited by like the company that cut the trailer. So it's like basically a 2-hour trailer, which means it looks cool, but that makes no goddamn sense. Mm-hmm. So then they follow that up with Wonder Woman. Suicide Squad. Oh. So then they follow that up with Wonder Woman, which everybody kind of agrees is up to this point is probably the gold standard in the DCEU. Gal Gadot was perfect. The Patty Jenkins direction was lovely, and the story was actually really, you know, powerful and felt feminine in all the best ways, and really kind of embodied that character. Where now my daughter knows who Wonder Woman is. Yeah. Thoughts on Wonder Woman?
Yeah, that's probably either 1 or 2. Possibly the whole, because it was a female director, maybe so many people didn't want to get their hands in the pot to give her a little bit of a say on her own film, and that might be where it went right for that film.
I think they also maybe realized when they tried that with Suicide Squad and it did not work. Like, it worked out financially. It made like $800 million or whatever worldwide, but critically, everybody's like, this is not good, guys. Yeah. Objectively, this is a bad movie. Yeah. I mean, I'm not ashamed. I'm kind of ashamed to own it, but I still enjoy it, but like as a guilty pleasure, like the way I enjoy Kung Pao Enter the Fist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, this is terrible, but it's kind of funny, whatever.
There's a big difference between a movie that's
but
entertaining.
But as a critic, I would never say it's a good movie. Yeah. Suicide Squad.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Wonder Woman does not. There's, I have my quibbles with it here and there, but it's easily the best of the bunch pre Shazam. Let's not even account Shazam because we haven't even talked about that yet. And then I think it went Justice League, which is again a huge mess, and I think probably the second weakest film of this group, just because Zack Snyder's vision wasn't really realized, and Joss Whedon came in, and so you have this weird mishmash of tones where the movie doesn't really know what the hell it wants to be, and it's cool to see those people on screen, and just to have those characters in live action together for the first time is exciting. Mm-hmm. But none of the stuff with Steppenwolf really registers at all. I think he looks terrible, and the whole storyline is really convoluted. Do you agree, or you actually, how do you feel about Justice League? And again, I own it, so I'm not...
There were parts that were really good. I like how they got the team together.
Right.
Then after that, it just wasn't as good.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then you had all the reshoots, and
the reshoot
Henry Cavill
with the
looks terrible in like half his scenes.
Yeah, and I heard about that before, and it distracted me the whole time.
Yeah. Well, Kai didn't even know about that.
Weird.
Kai didn't even. I didn't even tell her because I heard about it obviously, and so she didn't even know about that. And the first scene is like some kid interviewing Superman. And Kai's like, why does his mouth look weird? I'll be like, we'll get there later. I'll tell you after the movie. So she picked up on it right away.
Yeah.
And then Aquaman, which I wanted to talk about Aquaman specifically because in every episode of the every DCEU movie has been covered on this podcast to date, except for Aquaman and then now obviously Shazam. So I wanted to go and spend a little more time on Aquaman than those other few that we just talked about. So what did you think about Aquaman, directed by James Wan? Came out last year, huge hit. I don't think anybody expected that movie to be as huge as it was. It made, I don't know, either 900 or like close to $1 billion. I'll look it up right now. But what were your thoughts on Aquaman? I don't know how much we even really talked about that.
To be honest, I really liked Aquaman.
Yeah.
A lot of people hated on Aquaman a little bit because of like there's fish and it's like a different world, and people, I don't know, maybe people said there's too much or whatever. I really liked it. I found it entertaining, as a movie should be. But I also thought it established the character very, very well. I just thought all the details that were put into the movie were fantastic.
Yeah.
And it showed the different worlds. It depicted the different worlds very in an interesting way.
Right.
So,
But by the way, to clarify, worldwide gross 1.14 billion worldwide. So there you go.
yeah.
So they got a winner. So Jason Momoa is being locked into one of those like Samuel L. Jackson linked contracts.
Yeah, he's grandfathered in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's
Gal Gadot.
well, whatever they do here, they're definitely holding on to Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa, and then everything else we'll see. No, I mean I agree with you. I think it feels like also like the Wonder Woman situation where they actually got a good filmmaker and stayed the hell out of their way. James Wan did, like I said, did Aquaman, and he did Insidious and the first Saw movie and Furious 7, and he's a really, he's got a really good track record. The Conjuring movies, so you can tell that the movie is ridiculous and over the top, and you have an octopus playing drums and like super crazy CG, but the movie I feel like kind of leans into the bizarreness of everything that's happening, and it being so crazy and overblown is actually kind of part of its charm.
Yeah, you kind of embrace it.
Yeah, and I think it looks really cool. Like it's very colorful, and there's a lot of energy to the story. The focus does shift all over the place, where they're like every 20 minutes there's like a new objective. Like now we're heading after this thing, and now we need to get out of here, and now we need to go over here and do that. And like, I mean, okay, it's going for that sort of like swashbuckling style feel. And I saw it in theaters with our dad, and he was like, that's the best movie ever. He like really loved Aquaman. Like, I mean, he's always liked the character Aquaman. Yeah. But I have my issues with the story and the characters and certain things. I feel like some of it's a little bit on the predictable side, and some of the like political machinations that Ocean Master is involved in. Like, I don't care about the different kingdoms. Like, I don't, they spend too much time with some of that. So if it was me personally, I would have trimmed it. Like, it's 2 hours and 19 minutes, according to here. So I would have trimmed it down to like a nice tight 2 hours. I feel like you could have lost some of that, like, this person has to do this thing to get the ruler of what. I'm like, I don't care. Just show me Jason Momoa, like, punching things and stuff,
Yeah.
But I think as a film, like you said, as a film that establishes Arthur Curry / Aquaman as a viable big screen like hero, I think it works really well, and I'm very excited to see what they do with the sequel, which they already announced, and they even have a spin-off in the works for the Breach or wherever that like dark part of the ocean is. I forget. I haven't revisited the film since theaters. So
what is that? When he went to go get the Triton?
I think is that that big monster that's voiced by Julie Andrews for some reason. Yeah, so I want to see what happens with Ocean Master, who survived. Obviously, if James Wan comes back to direct the sequel, Patrick Wilson's kind of his guy in most of those movies I mentioned that he directed. Patrick Wilson shows up in a lot of them, and I like that they left Black Manta open for a sequel, and I'm curious to see more of this world. And I think my theory is that with pretty much all superhero movies, I feel like the sequel is usually better. I feel like X2 is better, Spider-Man 2 is better, The Winter Soldier is better, Thor Ragnarok is much better.
Yeah.
And I think Aquaman, now that they got the heavy lifting out of the way, I think that they can just move forward without having to feel like they need to explain everything. And I don't know if you've seen the Honest trailer for this movie that they released it a couple weeks ago.
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's so good because it comments on a lot of the stuff that I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they even say in there that it almost feels like James Wan, like this was a kind of a gamble in a way, because nobody, like I had no idea whether Aquaman, I didn't think it was going to make over $1 billion. Like Wonder Woman felt like more of a sure bet because she's recognizable, and politically and socially everyone's kind of ready for like a really good female superhero and things like that. But this is like a dude who talks to fish, and this unproven leading man. They say that it felt like James Wan didn't know if they were going to make any more of these, so he's like, we're going to put all the Aquaman stuff in this Mera, Black Manta, Ocean Master, all the creatures we can think of, every crazy, like, and the movie in a way feels like 6 movies, which in a way is part of what makes it fun, but also makes it feel exhausting at the same time.
because it's like an adventure.
Right.
It's like going to see a Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Yeah.
You know, or what you would expect when you go to see a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, they go to do something, they have like this whole excursion, maybe there's a fight, and then they go on to continue the story somewhere else.
Right.
Just as you said, this swashbuckler.
Well, I feel like some of this Pirates of the Caribbean sequels are like too much, and I think Aquaman kind of flirts with that line a little bit. But ultimately, I think it works, and I like that they took this character who's very like white and kind of like waspy, like, come on guys, let's go wear the outfit, and they made him like this super badass who's not only rocks that suit towards the end of the movie. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen Aquaman. It's on the Blu-ray box anyway. But they turned him. They actually made him more, more diverse. Like he's Polynesian now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So now you don't have just another white dude. Like he's tied to a culture that makes the character more interesting. It makes the cast more diverse, more representative of different people, and gives, and it fits the character. Like it gives Aquaman kind of a hook. Why, pun intended, to how to fit this fishman in, culturally and within the greater scope of the DCEU. So those are my just overall thoughts on Aquaman. So I liked it. I don't own it yet because I guess I'm kind of waiting for the price to go down a little, just because shop sales and all that. But I do enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it and seeing Momoa and Gal Gadot locked into that long-term DC contract that they couldn't get Ben Affleck into. So that leads us into the one we're going to talk about today. Do you have any other thoughts on Aquaman before we move on?
Other than Jason Momoa seems like he was made for that role.
Well, it's almost like they made the role for him now.
Yeah.
It's like they tailored the role to be like, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
You're like, Aquaman didn't have these tattoos, but guess what? Now you have these tattoos, so now Aquaman's got these tattoos.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they even did a comic book recently where it was like they made Aquaman look like Jason Momoa as opposed to the other way around. So I think that's cool. So, okay, Aquaman's closed. So that's I just wanted to get on the record my thoughts on Aquaman before we move into Shazam. So if you're listening to this on Odyssey, ODYSY1.com, you will only hear the spoiler-free segment. If you're listening to this on crookedtable.com, from iTunes, Spotify, the RSS feed for the podcast, stay tuned. After our spoiler-free conversation, I will include the spoiler section there. So check out crookedtable.com for that if you are not already listening to it. So this episode, we're going to talk about Shazam from director David F. Sandberg. So let's listen to a little of the trailer right now. Hello?
Say my name so my powers may flow through you.
But I don't know your name, sir.
Shazam.
Wait, for real?
Say it!
Okay! Shazam?
This means Billy!
What is happening?
You're the only person I know that knows anything about this Cape Crusader stuff.
Can I...
Oh, yeah. That's crazy, right?
All right, so that was a little bit of the trailer of Shazam, directed by David F. Sandberg. And I believe this guy I believe Sandberg also did a horror movie that Kai and I saw a couple years ago called Lights Out, have you seen any of his previous movies? Have you even heard of that?
I think I've heard of that.
And he also did Annabelle Creation, that kind of thing. So he's got a horror background. And I think we'll get into this. I think that really shows in this movie.
So other than that he's a child that turns into a superhero with his call word, Shazam, I didn't know much about him.
Okay.
Yeah, and mainly my introduction to the character was the game Injustice. They had Shazam in the game.
Nice.
So that was my introduction to the character. Other than that, I'd never heard of it. Also, I'd seen cartoon movie. I think
you and I saw the same one.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Justice League War?
Yes.
Yeah, where he's actually like a key. I think it's basically the rebooted version of the Justice League, and I think he's a key member of the Justice League from the beginning in that movie,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my main one from him too. It's like I've seen him in things here and there, but that's like primarily from that film. So yeah, I think the marketing for this movie did a really good job at making this film feel accessible, because it's a superhero movie, obviously, but it's also kind of self-aware of superhero movies. You know, the characters in the movie reference Batman and Superman. We don't know what they look like because they don't know who's going to play them in the subsequent movies, but they reference Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and things like that. So this is very much set in the DCEU, but it felt a little bit like Kick-Ass to me in that way, and that shares an actor with Kick-Ass, which we'll get into. The trailers did a good job at selling this as basically Big meets Superman. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Tom Hanks movie Big for younger listeners from 1988, which is definitely worth checking out. And I think that in and of itself kind of makes this movie feel different. Like even when it feels like it's following kind of the super, as you said earlier, the superhero template, it does feel fresh in a way. You know what I mean? It has a different vibe to it that
almost pokes fun.
Yeah. I mean, this is very clearly. Would you agree that this is pretty obviously the DCEU's like first real comedy? You know, none of the other films really.
Yeah, shot most of the other ones are more on the gritty, dark side, and
right.
I think this one takes what Marvel would do with a movie. Like they make it lighthearted, but they also have its dark moments. Right. That's what a movie should be. It shouldn't be.
Well, that's how comic books a lot of times are. Yeah. Not all the time, but still. Well, but even with
it depends on the character too. Shazam is not. I mean, from my two depictions of him in a cartoon movie and the video game, he doesn't seem like the character, and he's also a child.
Right. Exactly.
So he doesn't seem like the character is going to be really like dark and it's going to be brooding. Because it's a child. The child's not going to be...
He's just like, oh my God, I can fly.
It's not Batman. Batman is a whole different story. If you want to go that route, then that makes sense. Because he's lost his parents. He has that backstory for it. But to have, you know, pretty much a child going through the ropes of trying to be a superhero, it's an interesting angle.
Well, and it lends itself to that kind of levity. Because, like you said, it's a kid. So it just kind of like Kick-Ass... It exists in a world where people know about superheroes. Like, and there isn't any in Kick-Ass, but it's similar. Like, they're familiar with the tropes of superhero stories and things like that. Mm-hmm. And in this one, it's also like a child, and he's a little younger than Kick-Ass is supposed to be, but he's kind of in over his head and discovers that he can make a difference and all that other stuff. And that Aquaman kind of towed that line, kind of trying to strike the same Marvel balance, I guess, where it's action and it's fantasy and it's sci-fi and it's romance and it's also comedy, and it's like a mix of all of those. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Shazam, because it is from this perspective of this kid who gets these powers, it kind of is inherently more comedic. Like, our audience tonight was cracking up like frequently. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot more laughs in this than there are in the other DC movies put together, I would say.
Yes.
So it does feel like Warner Brothers and DC are feeling more confident and comfortable enough to switch it up a little bit, where Aquaman is sort of a Games of Thrones underwater kind of deal.
Yes. And
this is very much just kind of like a family comedy in a lot of ways.
Having it fun and light, it keeps the attention of the viewer.
Yeah.
You know, if you have it all, if it's like what they previously were doing, you can lose the viewer just because it starts feeling kind of like a drama type of movie,
which is fine. Like, it works, but
you want to, for a
character.
Superhero movie though, you want to try and get prime like demographic that they're looking for. It's just family, you know. If you don't get the families, then then that's a huge part of
toys.
Yeah, exactly.
But to a certain, there's a lot of merit in telling superhero stories that are dark, that are inherently darker, and that don't feel like they need to cater to kids. But if you're going for a sort of a big crowd-pleasing blockbuster, that tends to alienate people if you have something like Watchmen or something with the tone of the Daredevil Netflix show, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think the key to it is that it feels like an extension of the character that it's about. So obviously a Batman movie will be like darker and more depressing and kind of bleak because that's sort of his outlook on life. He fights criminals and he pretends to be Bruce Wayne but really inside he's just like, I can't wait to get back to my Batcave so I can find out what the hell the Joker is. Whereas Shazam, being a kid, is going to have a much more optimistic, kind of idealistic view of things and be like, oh, you're a bad guy, and be kind of silly about it all. And I think what they've done in the past that has suffered and that a lot of people have criticized, even though I like Man of Steel, a lot of people feel like that movie kind of betrays the essence of Superman, and that's they try to make Superman broody and like dark and like all that. But I mean, my argument for that has always been they're getting him to that point. It's sort of an evolution of the character throughout, and I think the goal was for him to become the Superman we know in Justice League. It didn't really happen the way it should have, but ultimately that's where it ended. So for Shazam, having the film as a comedy, I think is a wise move. And Zachary Levi, what did you think of his performance as Shazam? And then obviously we'll get into like the some of the kids and stuff in a minute.
I thought his performance was perfect because it had that wide-eyed childish view that displayed very well on screen.
And I haven't really seen him in that much. He was in he did the voice in Tangled as Flynn Rider, and then he was Fandral in the two Thor sequels, Dark World and Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. Ragnarok for 2 seconds, but still Fandral, the one with the blonde beard in the Dark World. So he didn't really, but even then he didn't really have much to do in those movies, obviously. So this is probably my first real proper introduction to him in a live action context. I know he was on the show Chuck and things like that, but I agree. I think he brings that sort of high spirited energy to it. But it's also, Billy Batson really does have his own arc throughout the course of the movie, and I thought that side of the storyline, without getting into specifics, was really heartfelt. And I think the way that resolves itself with him being a foster kid and finding himself in this new foster home and searching for his birth mother and trying not fitting in kind of anywhere and basically trying to find his place
and acquiring superpowers
along the way. Yeah, you can see the superpowers are kind of the catalyst for him finding his place. Literally by the end, which we'll get to, the way that the third act goes and kind of the twists involved, it's literally him finding who he belongs with his other foster kids and all that stuff. So I thought all that was great, and I think the actor they cast to play Billy Batson opposite Zachary Levi was like there's really good casting in this movie because they look similar. Like their faces they have a similar look in their eyes and bone structure. Like it's easy to see that kid Asher Angel, to see him growing up to become Zachary Levi. Like it worked out a lot and stuff, obviously. So I thought both of them were really great in this. I also wanted to point out Jack Dylan Grazer, who played Freddy, not the one sitting in front of me, but Freddy in the movie, who's been all over the marketing. He's the crippled foster kid who's, I guess, foster brother to Billy Batson, and he teaches him the ropes and how to be a superhero and all that. I thought he gave a really strong supporting performance in this. And now I'm just realizing, because I'm looking at his IMDb, he was actually in It, the lab from a couple years ago. He was Eddie. And I totally didn't even remember that was the same kid. I'm like, this kid looks familiar. And Jack Dylan Grazer, why is that name ringing a bell? So he was in It, and I thought he was fantastic in that movie as well. So more so than in most superhero movies, including Marvel, where, you spend the first act, the first 20 to 30 minutes introducing all the characters. I kind of almost didn't want the superhero stuff to happen because I was really into the foster parents that take Billy in and like all the kids there and stuff. Like, what did you think about the way they established all of that? So yeah,
I liked the dynamic that they had. I liked the characters, and I liked their whole sense of family while he's rejecting the fact of having a family all at the same time.
But all the actors that were in the film, like the kids, I thought were really, really great. I was really impressed with all of them. I'm trying to find the name of the actress who I really liked, but I think you know who I'm talking about. If I can find the little girl in the movie.
Yes.
Darla. I feel like That was the character's name. I feel like she stole every single scene she was in. Like, I don't know if this is her first movie or what, because IMDb is being really slow right now for me. But she just had such a brightness to her, like the character and the actress. And I think that she contributed a lot of the film's, some of the funniest moments and some of the sweetest moments. Mm-hmm. So I don't, just like the ensemble that they put together around Zachary Levi in this film. Faith Herman is her name, playing Darla. I thought was really strong. It's hard to do that. It's hard to find an ensemble of characters that can support the hero in that way. And I think since this is a family film, it makes sense that they create that unit around him. It's just like the first act of this movie, meeting all these people and seeing the situation and like what a like supportive household. Like, you know, the one kid who's playing video games, and I already mentioned Darla, and the other kid who's like, disaffected by it all and all that. Like, I was like, you know what? I kind of want these people to adopt me. I know I got parents and I'm grown up, but I kind of want to hang out with these people. Like, this is kind of fun, you know? Yeah. So before anything superhero related happened, I was in. Yeah, they have a warm, loving household, and the people, I don't know the names because I don't have IMDb. There was a lot of names. But the guy that plays Jerry on The Walking Dead and that Jerry other woman, on The Walking Dead. I don't know. Oh, is he the foster dad? Yeah, he's the foster dad. I don't watch The Walking Dead, so I don't know who the heck that is. Yeah, he's on The Walking Dead. He's well, I don't want to ruin the show for you, because if you ever watch the show, I probably won't at this point. It's like 10 seasons in. Did he die on the show? No. They all die at some point. Yeah. Well, we all died. But he's Blake. But no, he hasn't died yet. I don't know. Hopefully he doesn't. Cooper I like him Andrews a lot. Is the actor? Cooper Andrews. Yes. Yeah, he plays Victor. And where is she, the mom from? I feel like I've seen her before. I don't remember her name either. The thing that I love about the parent, while you're looking that up, is how they understood where he was coming from, because they were both foster kids themselves. Yeah, there were a lot of really sweet moments with that. And they were accepting of his current emotions, because they knew that, you know, that he would have some resistance to being in a foster home, and they were patient with them. Yeah, we were patient with him as he went through that process. That actress's name is Marta Milans, and she's a Spanish actress, and she's done, looks like it's mostly a lot of TV. Oh. She was on a show No Tomorrow. She did a few episodes there. A few episodes in a show called The Pier, or at least she's slated to in 2019. So, you know, Killer Women. Nothing that I'm really familiar with. She looks like she might come from Spanish television. She was on a show called Valientes and things like that. So I don't know if that's telenovela, maybe things like that. But she was really good in this, and I all the supporting casts. You watch something like Wonder Woman, and you're like, and you know, you love Wonder Woman, you love Steve Trevor, but then like, a bunch of other dudes. The other guy, the Native American dude, the Irish drunk guy, and this other. You don't really fall in love with any of them, because there's no like prime moment that you really like the character. Right, and then you could say that about the MCU too. Like, unless they're a hero, like part of the Avengers, you're like, I don't care about, you know. I guess Peggy Carter's an exception. I'm trying to think of like a lot of the other people in those movies. Yeah. I mean, Peter, what's his name? Ned? Oh, I like Ned. Yeah. So, okay. But yeah, that's a good comparison, actually, because I get that similar kind of Spider-Man Homecoming, like realistic, but in a superhero environment kind of vibe from this movie. Yeah, like Ned is like the same as the supporting character in this one, Eddie or Freddy. Yeah, I should know. It's my name. I was going to say, how'd you forget that? So yeah, before it's kind of like a sideline person wanting to be a superhero, but they're like trying to help that person become a superhero. Right, exactly. So, the man in the chair. Yeah, Freddy could be his man in the chair, sort of. No, actually, I'm glad you brought up Spider-Man Homecoming, because I'm actually in the process of rewatching it for Endgame. Not that it's really that relevant, but just because why not? But I think that is probably the Marvel movie that this feels closest to in a lot of ways, as far as tone and. It's a superhero going through the ropes as a supporting character, trying that wants to be a superhero badly, because who doesn't want to be a superhero?
stand by them and help them, figure things out.
Right.
That crutch for them.
There's a real personal story in the core. Like you can even say about in Spider-Man Homecoming how he's basically viewing Tony Stark as kind of a surrogate father figure, and then this movie's about him kind of like trying to deal with his absence of his mother. Like there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
It's a good call. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and then Freddy, his knowledge about superheroes shows, and he constantly helps him out, or when he's like, I guess, training to be a superhero.
The montage thing,
yeah, the whole
with
montage
the flossing
thing
and everything.
Yeah,
which is in the movie, but for like 2 seconds, so it's not like an issue.
It's not an obnoxious.
I think that made people worry. They're like, "Oh man, this is gonna suck."
Yeah, this is gonna be like
not really.
That's just to get some of the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a funny GIF you can send people.
Yeah, pretty
basically.
much. But it's like, oh, this is how this, do you have laser vision? Do you have telepathy? So you're able to do different tests. Such I thought that was really cool. And later on in the film, that also helps out a lot too, because he has a certain viewpoint, an outward view that Billy Batson wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. He's just kind of like just going through the motions, but he doesn't have that background.
Right. And Freddy also is the vehicle by which they reference all the other superheroes. So like, oh, Batman, I saw Superman do this or whatever.
Yeah, because he admires them so much. Right. He has collector's items of each.
Right. So just running through some other people in the cast. We should probably also mention Djimon Hounsou is in this movie. Also in the Marvel, Captain Marvel
Double
movie.
Dipping, yes.
Playing Korath in there again from Guardians of the Galaxy. Like he's one of those guys that has never played a superhero really, but like always pops up in these movies, just like in random supporting roles. You're like, hey, Djimon Hounsou, what the hell? You got like 2 scenes in here as a wizard.
Yeah.
As the titular character, really. He's the real Shazam, honestly, in this movie. And that's not a spoiler if anybody that knows about the character or
he's in the trailer, yeah.
He's like, say my name. He's like, I don't know your name. He's like,
I thought
Shazam.
I wasn't sure at first if it was, because I was like, this sounds like kind of looks like him.
I know. Well, he's got that like crazy Gandalf style beard going on.
Yeah, and makeup and everything. So I wasn't sure if it was him, but then at the end I was like, oh, okay, it was. I thought it was.
Yeah, he's great and everything. Every time he shows up, I'm like, hey, Djimon Hounsou.
He has a very distinct voice,
he does.
Too.
He's got such a great look, too. You put him as a wizard and it works. You put him as like the mercenary.
I could see him as his own
Guardians.
superhero.
I would love to see him as something. It's too bad that he's been in the MCU, because he would have been a cool Blade. He's probably older than they want, because I think he's at least like late 40s probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely need to bring Blade into the MCU at some point. And it's unfortunate that he's in all these movies already.
I would love them to revamp Blade. If you get the
fun. And also, I kind of teased the Kick-Ass connection. We had Mark Strong here as Thaddeus Sivana, who's like the big bad, and ironically, the movie's called Shazam, but it really kind of opens with his character in a flashback, and that's not a spoiler, but I thought that was an interesting way to open up the movie. And in a lot of these superhero films, one of the most common criticisms is the villain sucks. But I think that Shazam stands... Honestly, I think the villain in Shazam is actually kind of more fun than the villain in Captain Marvel, because you open up with this movie from his point of view. Like starts as his story. So you understand why he does what he does later on when they flash forward, when they cut to present day and you see him kind of wreaking havoc. And we won't get into like the powers that he has or all that until later, I guess, because I don't think any of that really has been revealed in the marketing, has it? I haven't seen that, very little.
Yeah, I think just the electricity
you just kind of see him, fighting.
Your phone's charged. Your phone's
No,
charged.
I mean Sivana, the bad guy.
Oh, his bad guy. I think you're talking about Shazam.
No, because it opens with the villain.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's actually in the marketing very little. He's in the trailer for like 2 seconds when Shazam's like, you're like a bad guy, that whole thing. But I don't think you see anything about what's going on with that character. And I know I'm going to want to look into how true that is to the comic book counterpart, because I'm not familiar with Shazam's villains, except for Black Adam, who I've heard about. And spoilers, I guess, you don't get any tease for Black Adam in this movie, not even in the mid or post-credit scenes. I think a lot of people were probably thinking that was maybe going to happen because Dwayne Johnson's been connected to it for so long.
So when are they?
I think they're still developing a Black Adam movie.
So he's going to have his own movie.
I mean, you'd have Dwayne Johnson. Wouldn't you want to make your own movie with him as a super villain / anti-hero or whatever?
Oh, so they're going to do it's an anti-hero.
I think they're going to probably do where he's bad, but
he's also good.
But he's bad,
he's
but
lovable bad.
Yeah, I mean, they just made a Venom movie, so
yeah,
not Warner Brothers, but still, that made a shit ton of money, and it's not even really that good. To be honest, it's kind of in that Suicide Squad category, Venom. Where I'm like, this is fun, but it kind of sucks.
Do you like Venom more
than Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, because I actually like this. I'm more invested.
You like Tom Hardy more than...
Well, I'm also more invested in the Spider-Man oeuvre than I am the Suicide Squad oeuvre. Yeah. I'm like, Killer Croc's fine, whatever. Captain Boomerang, I've never even really seen you before. But again, we just watched Spider-Verse last night on the screen here at home.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of that world. So
yeah, that's one of my favorite superhero movies.
I could see them.
Totally.
Oh, in the Spider-Verse? Yeah. Oh god, it's so awesome. Better than Shazam. Sorry, Shazam. Shazam's good, but let's not go crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see them doing a Venom-esque like Black Adam movie where I'm bad, but I'm fighting worse people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then maybe have a crossover in Shazam sequel or something. It's unclear where DC is going with this. So Mark Strong playing Sivana, I thought his character was, he kind of falls into that like I just want power kind of thing a little bit. But at least you understand why. And Mark Strong is another one of those guys that keeps showing up in comic book movies. Like I said, he played the villain in the first Kick-Ass movie. It's kind of a bummer for me to see him in here in a way because I think he's good in this performance. But if they were going to go with like a classical Lex Luthor, I thought he would have been the best choice. Like I was hoping get Mark Strong to play Lex Luthor. It'd be so great because he played Sinestro in the Green Lantern movie that everyone likes to pretend never happened. And I thought he was great in that. Like he was the best part of that movie.
Yeah.
So I wanted.
He plays the villain well.
Well, he wasn't even really the villain in Green Lantern. That's the thing. They were setting it up for him to play the villain in the sequel, and he never got to. So maybe Warner Brothers was like, "Hey, we need a villain for this one. We're not bringing your Sinestro back, so you want to take this role?" So I thought he was great, and I like the powers and the abilities that he has. They developed that nicely, and it leads to some really strong horror vibes. Like I think that's where David Sandberg's like horror background really came out like strong because some of those sequences are like legitimately kind of
terrifying.
Scary.
Yeah,
like I'm glad I'm not bringing my kid to see this one because she would be like, I want out of here. I don't like this, that kind of thing. Which we'll mention in spoilers. So overall, the story I think it hits a lot of the similar kind of origin story beats, but I think there's a lot of really great moments comedically and character wise. I think. Did you feel like the story was overstuffed, or do you think that they had the right balance between the Shazam like fantastical stuff and the more grounded character moments?
Yeah, I think they did have a well-defined balance between the two, because a lot of the character moments came out during those Shazam moments,
right? Because
a lot of the bonding between Billy and Freddy was when they were training as Shazam, or so not only did Billy and Freddy bond over those moments, but it also there were also conflicts that went into character development with Shazam as well, without going too much into spoilers.
Right. So, I mean, there's not a lot. There's surprisingly not a lot that I feel like we can really say without getting into spoilers.
Yeah.
Just because.
Like tiptoeing
because,
here.
I the marketing
through
doesn't.
The windows.
I know.
The garden.
That's a James Wan reference.
Yeah.
You talk about that song from Insidious. Because the marketing did a really good job of establishing this is who this guy is. What if you were a kid and you got the powers of Superman? Wouldn't that be crazy? But they don't tell you anything about his like personal story other than the foster kid moving into a new home.
That's a big
anything about
point.
the villain. You know what I mean? It's just like this is your big high concept superhero movie. Go see it. You don't need to know anything else. Enjoy it. Have fun.
I mean, I think this primarily with child audiences, and also I think the toys are going to sell like crazy from this movie because it goes from their viewpoint of being a kid and and wanting to be a superhero and actually becoming a superhero.
Right. It's a wish fulfillment thing.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I could be a superhero,
but
choose me. I'm worthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think it also comes from the viewpoint of the child inside of us wanting to become a superhero as well, and what we would do with those powers, and how like how he acted, like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, trying to show it off, taking advantage of these new superpowers and trying to hit on ladies or whatever.
I'm trying to buy beer.
Trying to get beer if you were that age.
Right.
And
then following through with how that little bit more, like it starts out, like it has moments where it's acting like a movie, and then it pulls back and like, but no, this is how that would really be. You know what I mean? Like it builds itself up and then deflates itself for comedic effect. And I think does that several times to great effect.
Yeah.
I said effect too many times, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think deep down, we all want to feel like a child again. And I think that in marketing takes advantage of this all the time. They'll put like, oh, be young again, or be a child, or, car ads and stuff like that. And I think that this role really grasps at that idea as well, like to be a child, to be youthful. I think that's the appeal that a lot of movies and TV shows, they spark that in us.
Right.
And we look at like Sex Education and stuff like that. Like we look at it. It's a show on Netflix.
Okay, I was like, the class? I don't watch as much Netflix as you.
But it's like it has like it's or Big Mouth or something like that on Netflix as well.
I've seen an episode or two of that.
Oh, you should watch the whole thing. It's good. You didn't like it?
I don't know if it's for me.
Why?
This is a tangent. I don't know. I watched the episode. I'm like, this is kind of gross, and like, I don't know.
It is gross, and
I don't even watch Family Guy.
It's really
anymore.
weird, but the point I'm making is that even a lot of older people and stuff, they look back on like things that have like kids or emotions, or like a girl who loves a boy and they're in high school, or a new kid that acquires powers. It's also really enticing to older people as well, because they have that feeling of
nostalgia,
being youthful and nostalgia and looking back and being like, oh, I remember being young and wanting to be a superhero so badly, and this would be incredible if I had this.
I'm 35 and I'm already like, oh man, I'm being young.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not that,
it has like a youthful exuberance to it.
Anymore.
And a wishfulness.
Right. I think it's that plus the chosen one thing.
Yeah.
Which is, Harry Potter's, he's a kid who's chosen, but it's also like Luke Skywalker and Neo. Everybody's like, you want to be told, hey, you literally like the Lego movie, you're the special. You're the most important person that's ever lived. Like that whole, everybody wants to feel that sense of fulfillment. And this kind of couples together the nostalgia for being young and also being told you've been chosen for this.
And the beautiful thing that I like about this too is, the person that gets the story is the chosen one. Right. Right? Because who's going to do a story about the person that's not chosen, right? But in this one, you have a story.
I know where you're going. Well, it's not really. It's a good. They don't really.
You kind of have a story that kind of has two outlines.
I'm trying to figure out how much we should say about that. Because
there's two timelines, and it displays both of them.
Right. And
it shows from both points of view.
It represents the people that are chosen and the people that are not chosen.
Exactly.
Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
So
Is that too much?
No. I think that's fine.
Oh, okay.
I think final spoiler-free thoughts on Shazam, and then we'll transition into spoiler section. If you're listening to this on Odyssey, the spoiler section will be available on crookedtable.com the Monday after this is dropped. So Monday, April 8th. After the film has been out for opening weekend. If you're listening to crookedtable.com, stick around for the spoiler section. So kind of closing spoiler-free thoughts on Shazam.
It's definitely in my top 3 of DC.
Of the DCEU, the ones we talked about?
Yeah, my top 3 are Wonder Woman,
let's rank it. There you
Aquaman, Shazam. I don't know those order. I don't know the order of Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Shazam.
They're all like swimming around in the
They're
same
swimming
pool.
around. It depends on how if I'm looking.
If they're swimming around, Aquaman's gonna win.
Yeah. If I'm looking at them from a film perspective, Wonder Woman would probably be at the top,
Right.
and then it would be Shazam, and then it would be Aquaman.
It's the thing that I always differentiate, where it's what is the best versus what is my favorite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you have to, but if you're looking at it from an entertainment value, Aquaman might be like one or two. Yeah. Aquaman might be one.
How many times did you see it just the once?
I just saw it the once. So maybe after watching it another, 2 or 3
like I said,
times.
I haven't seen it again either yet.
Yeah, maybe after watching it another time or another 2 times, my opinion might change of it. But I remember from watching it the first time that I was really entertained, and although it did go a little bit all over the place, I was along for the journey. Mm-hmm. So I think that one, in terms of entertainment value, I'd put it as number 1, and then Shazam, and then Wonder Woman. The connection between her and it's more it's a little bit slower, I feel.
Yeah.
In terms of Aquaman and Shazam.
Well, remember what I said about superhero sequels. I fully expect Wonder Woman 1984, which comes out. I think it's next year. I think they pushed it to next year. I fully expect that to probably be better than Wonder Woman in a lot of ways. Now that they've gotten like the mascara, blah blah blah, the lasso, that's all, that whole thing. Like, okay, cool. Now show me doing her, like, not show me doing her. Show her doing something awesome.
Yeah.
I still think Wonder Woman's probably the best movie, but I think Shazam is my favorite.
Shazam is your favorite.
I think Shazam might be my favorite. Like, it's the one that I probably will want to rewatch the most.
Yeah.
And then under those two, I still have Man of Steel. So it's like
Man of Steel there, yeah.
Best Wonder Woman, favorite Shazam, and then Man of Steel, like kind of runner up for both categories, I guess. And then Aquaman, BVS, Justice League, so
on the very bottom,
all the way to the bottom. But even that is entertaining in a shitty way, whatever that means. So definitely, if you're listening to this on Odyssey, check out Shazam in theaters on Friday, April 5th. Highly recommended by both of us. And, I would say bring your kids, but don't bring the super small kids, because there are some scenes that I as a 35-year-old man, I'm like, wow, this is kind of scary for like a movie that's designed for families. Like, I'm thinking specifically of the whole boardroom sequence, which we'll talk about in a minute in the spoiler section. But yeah, so definitely check out Shazam. So that'll end off the spoiler-free section of the podcast. Freddie, thanks for coming back to the Crooked Table podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Nice. And then you say Shazam, and then
Shazam.
All right, now it'll take us into the spoiler section of the Shazam review. If you have not seen Shazam, go see Shazam, say Shazam, and fly yourself to the theater to buy your ticket for Shazam. So this is last warning, spoiler section, free for all. Go. What do you want to talk about first?
To be honest, when I came to see the movie, I thought it was a Harry Potter movie. I didn't know we were seeing a superhero movie.
Nice. Because of the wizards?
I saw the lightning bolt. I thought it was Harry. I was like, oh, hey, Harry. I kind of look like him. I can go for... I've always been compared that people say I look like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Growing up.
True.
Maybe not so much
That's
now.
why you have the beard. You're like, fuck that. Harry Potter has no
exactly.
beard.
It's for me to look older and also to not look like Harry Potter.
So we were tiptoeing around the fact that the opening sequence is a flashback to 1974 with Dr. Sivana, which his name sounds like Savannah, like what? Georgia, or like where the animals
Savannah,
roam.
Georgia,
I don't know. So I don't know much about that character, so I need to read up about it. But where he is given the chance to have the power of Shazam, like he is essentially chosen and then proves himself not to be worthy. So I think that is an interesting setup between, like you said, people that are chosen, that are the special, that are given the chance to do the right thing, and the people that lose that chance, and rather than try to strive, because there's a little bit of misdirection too, where you think that he's hunting down to find out where the wizard is so that he could get the power of Shazam. But really, he's like, nope, screw that. I'm over this shit. I'm taking the bad, the evil demon eye thing or demon ball and stick it in his eye socket. And I'm just going to embrace, the world thinks I'm an asshole. All right, I'm going to embrace that and I'm going to be a supervillain. I think that was because didn't you kind of think that maybe he was going to be after the staff at first? I did, at least. No,
I thought he was going after the ball just because he was intent. He was looking at it intensely. I don't think he might not even known that power came from the staff.
Yeah.
He just knew that, he was looking at that ball. It was talking to him. It was whispering, the powers to him. He knew that the powers came from that. He might not have known that the staff had any power attached to it. So
right.
I don't, at that moment,
I think it's also funny because Shazam, the wizard, not the superhero, has this whole first you need to prove yourself worthy. He tells the young Savannah, and then later on he's like, "Time is up. I don't have time for this shit. You're getting the power, kid." He like totally foregoes with protocol. So you're like, "Well, wait, is he worthy? Is he not worthy? What's the deal?" It's like he has to prove himself to be worthy, which I think is more interesting than being told you're cool. Go ahead, you're all right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I liked all that, and as I was kind of tiptoeing around it through the tulips in the garden, that I didn't know that he was going to have basically 7 like demon spirit monster things living in his eye that he could summon that were like part of the source of his power that represented the 7 deadly sins. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea any of that because none of that was in the marketing whatsoever. It's just like, oh, dude with a glowy eye. Okay, cool, whatever.
It was mainly Shazam just training, and that was the trailer.
Right, because they're selling you on, like you said, the concept of, hey, be a kid and a superhero? What?
Yeah, exactly.
So I liked that whole device with the villain and his powers and those monsters, which were all kind of scary. That's what I was alluding to. Like when he shows up at his father's boardroom and his brother's like, you screwed up, you're an asshole, dad doesn't like you, that kind of thing. And he's like, all right, and he throws his brother out of the window and like, I kind of knew that was happening, but the way they edited it, like I was still kind of taken aback.
I knew he was going to be killed, but I didn't know it was going to be like that.
Right.
And that was
sudden.
the shock value of it.
We're so sudden. Like it's just like, oh, let's
and you kind of just like see him fly out the window and then fall. I was like, ooh.
And then he unleashes the monsters on the boardroom, and they're like attacking everyone in very PG-13 ways, where like you see the head go in the mouth and it cuts away. Also,
very beautifully, or not, I guess, but artistically done very well. With how the bodies are hitting the glass,
and they're all like, "Hello."
Yeah,
that was
haunting. The Walking Dead does The Walking Dead is gory, but there's times to do it where it's gory, but it's also a whole other thing to do it where it's artistic and it's also shows things, exactly what's happening. And I thought that was a really cool moment of them hitting the glass like that and then just being separated
it felt like a little 5-minute horror movie in the middle of a superhero movie. That's what I mean by saying the director's horror roots were really coming out in full force. It felt like that scene in Spider-Man 2 where Doc Ock is on the operating table and he's like out, but the limbs are doing their thing and they're like attacking people, throwing them. It's like silhouetted and it goes for the chains, like all that stuff, which was basically Sam Raimi being like, hey, remember I made all those Evil Dead movies? Look, I still got that kind of thing in me. And so this was David F. Sandberg really kind of exercising his horror chops a little bit.
That was his movie villain moment.
Yeah, I know.
There's a moment, and a lot of times there's a moment where movie villains like, hey, I'm the bad guy. Let me prove to you that I'm the bad guy. And a lot of times in movies, it can come off terribly, where it's like okay, you shot that person. They were saying no, please, begging, and then you shot them, and then okay, you're the bad guy. You know what I mean? Right. And it comes off terribly because it's like it's nothing creative, but this way I thought it was really cool.
And he's not as charismatic as like a Joker, and I thought my jokes were bad, or like Loki being like, "Is not this simpler? Do you not crave subjugation?" That whole thing. Like, he doesn't have that level of charisma. but his powers were really visually interesting, and they established that personal story with him and his father, and like from literally the opening scene of the movie. So I thought that felt really earned when that moment happens, even if it was horrific at the same time. Also, I wanted to bring up, before I forget, that I really liked the big reference in the middle of the movie when they walk running. There's a whole sequence in the mall, and he steps on the like giant keyboard. Oh, that felt like a very obvious, like, hey, we saw Big. This is kind of our ding, ding, ding. That kind of nod to that. That was beautiful. And you were mentioning the villain like monologuing and that kind of like the villain like moments, and that was one of the best instances I think of this movie sort of poking fun at the superhero tropes where they're flying in the sky and he's like, oh, I'm going to destroy you, and then Shazam's like, it's like, you're like a mile away, like I can't hear anything you're saying, and he just continues his little speech, and Shazam's just like, all right, whatever. Yeah, that was great. There were a lot of fun moments like that, kind of cutting things, subverting expectations basically.
Because it's true, he doesn't have super hearing,
right?
He's not Superman, so it's like, how would he be able to hear this person?
That's what I mean. Like
away?
It brings
it's
you.
Like there's cars, there's trains.
It brings you into the world of a movie where there's all these crazy things happening, but then they're like, this part we're going to be realistic about, and then they go back to shooting lightning out of their hands and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it makes it really fun. Like you toy with the audience, like you never know which way the movie's going to go. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
I liked the fact that the Batarang was kind of a part of a critical moment there. And like you see it come out of nowhere, and it hits him in the back, and you're like, "Oh my god, did Batman show up for some reason? Like, is Ben Affleck gonna pop out in a second? It's like a secret cameo." And no, it's the kids, and it threw his little Batarang.
Actually, it was actually a good spot. He got him in the head.
Yeah, it was the head. That's right, not the back.
Yeah. But that was a good spot. That throw was perfect.
It was.
It's like he did some practice with it.
Probably. I mean, if you had a Batarang when you...
Oh, yeah. I'd throw it at a tree trunk. Or some people that I don't
nearby
like.
Animals? No, I hope not. Local neighborhood children. What else did I want to point out? The boardroom thing I loved. Of course, I already said that. The thing with the mom and the fact that he finally finds his mom. And she's like, yeah... I knew you were there. I ditched you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I was 17. I was scared. That was... I mean, this movie's really funny, and you spend most of the time laughing throughout it. But I, literally got, teared up a couple of times, and that was one of the scenes.
Yeah, and his performance was incredible, too. Because you could see the distraught and the deflatedness in that character in that moment when she didn't even know what that compass thing was.
She's like, I don't know. Yeah, it meant so much to him.
Yeah, it meant so much to him all those years that he's been, wishing and wanting that she'd be around and wondering why she wasn't around or come to look for him. And it turns out she doesn't even remember their last moment together.
Right. A lot of really strong twists in this movie, like plot wise. Like no twists. There's no twists like. Another superhero showing up. I mean, spoilers. We were in the spoiler section, but there is a Superman kind of cameo at the end, but not really because you don't even see his face. So that doesn't even really count to me. But there's a lot of twists that don't betray the sanctity is the wrong word, but they don't betray this storyline. It would have been easy for them to do a cop out and be like, "Oh, we're in the middle of a battle," and part of me was like, "Oh, are they going to do any Henry Cavill shows up or anything like that?" But then that would have felt like felt cheap. It would have felt like a cheat. Like you're trying to create Shazam. It's a
Shazam movie.
Right.
You shouldn't have help from,
especially in the first one. Establish this guy first.
From other superheroes. You should only have help from himself and Shazam.
Oh well, other superheroes. We'll get there in a second. But yeah, I think there's no mistake that all the movies we've now named as our favorites. We mentioned Wonder Woman, we mentioned Aquaman, we mentioned Shazam, we mentioned Man of Steel, all solo, almost completely standalone superhero movies. We didn't mention BVS, we didn't mention Suicide Squad, we didn't mention Justice League, which are ostensibly the three crappy ones. Yeah. So I guess this is the seventh one. I said sixth earlier, but yeah. So I'm glad that they didn't take an easy way out there, and they made it feel true to this movie rather than the Justice League showing up. He embraces his new family and literally gives all of his foster brothers and sisters powers where they all become their own Shazam person. What did you think about that? That was probably one of the biggest, like, what? This is happening now? And people clapped and like freaked out when that happened.
So they permanently have that power though?
I don't know. I don't think so. That's the other thing that was unclear.
I think that they do have that power.
But that's not how it is. But then Shazam's not as...
Well, the power wasn't taken away though.
I don't know how I feel.
He broke the staff.
I don't know how I feel about that.
They're all Shazam.
I guess.
That's what it seems like.
I feel like that was unclear. Like I was almost waiting for somebody for the wizard to show back up and be like, "That's cool that you guys had that." He's the one I picked. What the hell?
Well, the wizard disintegrated.
I know. A spirit or a voice. I don't know. Because I kind of like. I think that was a fun third act twist, and I like that happened. Yeah. But I don't want that to stay the norm because then Shazam's not special anymore. Like there's nothing. Like he doesn't need the Justice League at all.
I think that the point is that he's not the only Shazam. Like they're all Shazam.
I guess.
Like, it's his origin story, but it's also all of their origin stories.
I guess we'll have to see. I'm sure I have to. Once the movie comes out, I'll have to read interviews with the director and see if he clarifies that. I
wonder if all those Shazams are different, different Shazams across comic books.
That'd be interesting.
Maybe like did the Shazam grow? Like did Billy Batson grow up in a foster home with all those characters?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't see. That's the thing. I don't know. I think he was a foster kid, but I don't know if these are specific characters or they just created their own.
Yeah, they might be all like timelines of
the Shazams into the Shazam verse.
They just added all the Shazam. Yeah, it's like the Green Lantern. It's not just one Green Lantern. There's several Green Lanterns.
That's true.
Which I can't wait for too. That would be a good movie.
Green Lantern? There's supposed to be the Green Lantern Corps. Like it was supposed to be like what 2020, 2019, and then 2021 or something, and like nothing's happened with that.
Yeah, so I guess that's not going to happen. But that would be a good movie.
Sort of.
I think so.
It's funny that you bring up Green Lantern because as we were leaving, did you hear that guy in the like?
Yeah, he was like,
he's like, oh,
he just has a green light.
What kind of power is that? He's got a green light. I tweeted about it as soon as I left. I was like, some dude who clearly, like, I put that quote, and it's like some dude who clearly doesn't understand Green Lantern. He doesn't just have a green light, dude. He can make anything. Also, I wanted to be sure that I mentioned the whole thing, the Santa gag that kept running throughout with the mall Santa that's terrorized by the dude. Yeah. And then later at the carnival and later he's on TV like these things with the fucking energy, dude. Like that was so great. Oh my God. There were the more I'm talking about this movie, the more I'm like, yeah, I think this is definitely my favorite.
They are going to make another Shazam movie.
I don't think it's been confirmed, but I mean, I would assume so.
I think with how well this movie is.
Well, we haven't seen how it performs, but at this recording,
but I know it's going to be if a superhero movie is good. I know that people are already going to want to see it, but if a super movie is good, then I think it's going to get the money for it.
Right.
People are going to want to see him. I'm definitely going to see it another time because my girlfriend has this.
Well, yeah.
And you're probably going to see it another time too. Probably.
Maybe. Yeah, probably.
So they got our tickets even though we saw it.
Exactly. No, and I think it feels like all the 7 DC movies. This one feels the most accessible. Like, it feels like I could show this movie to pretty much anyone and they'd be like, oh, I like this movie. I don't normally like superhero movies, but this one's really fun. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It hits, it's what the people in the industry, I guess, call
fun.
The 4 quadrants. It's like men, women, adults, children, all of that. Like, it works for everybody. Mm-hmm. Just based on our screening, like, people were really into it kind of the entire way through. So I feel like this is a good sign for the future of the DCEU. With this and Aquaman, it does feel like they're very much getting their act together. I'm a little worried that the next one they have coming out is that random Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, why are you doing this? Like, I mean, maybe it'll be a fun like random here and there, but it feels like they're still in that transitional period, but they're coming out of it. Maybe
Yeah. Well, their past 2 movies were good.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know if they have their grand vision like like the other people have and the other across the street.
Yeah. I think, but the point I was making before is, not a point, but I think that if they make another Shazam movie, which I think that
They likely will, yeah. Well, we got to get that Black Adam movie with The Rock.
Yeah, I hope that they have the Santa Claus.
Oh, have that guy coming back?
Yeah, I hope he's back.
And then you had the Shazam, Darla Shazam, being like, oh my God, it's really you. She's like, my name is Darla, and I've been really good. Like,
Yeah,
that was
really
cute
good.
because she's like a 7-year-old.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Oh, that's so
The
great.
youngest of them.
So
also.
very fun movie. I liked it a lot. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. Not to compare, but whenever you talk about comic book movies, you have a tendency to do that. What do you prefer, Shazam or Captain Marvel? Because I'm like a little mixed on it. Because I get
They're different. They're very different.
They're really right. I get different. Like I think this is much funnier.
Yeah.
But I also don't think Captain Marvel's really trying to be funny that often.
No, they weren't.
I feel like I get more like
the
I
only
feel
points that it
yeah.
was funny was like because she's
when she blows up the jukebox.
yeah because
and he's
she's
like, what the hell's that mean?
she's in a world that she doesn't know what's going on, so she thinks everything's a threat, or she doesn't know if it's a scroll or
right
or blah blah blah. But and the whole thing with the Flurkin or something like that.
The Flurkin thing?
Yeah. That the things with the cat, he's like, oh, this is a cat, and then it eats a
They're
person or whatever. Yeah, spoiler. Well, yeah. I'm sure everyone has seen
it's
that.
Been out a while.
Anyway, yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
this
hard
one
for me to
had
pick
more
one.
consistent comedy. Shazam.
Right.
Yeah.
But I get a different kind of like this had a lot of heart to it, and so I was feeling like for Billy and his situation with the family and his mom and all that. But I got different feels from Captain Marvel, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because of the context and like the female empowerment and all that stuff, which I really loved in that movie.
I don't know.
I'd say I think I like them around the same, but for completely different reasons.
I might like Shazam a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it has more pure entertainment value, I think.
Just because it's very different
Right.
than what you would normally expect in a superhero movie.
Right.
Just because of him being a child that's been thrown into the superhero game unexpectedly. I think that whole element gives the edge on Captain Marvel, but only by a little. And it's hard to scale both of them to each other because they're different kinds of superhero movies.
Yeah.
So,
is there any other spoiler thing you wanted to mention about Shazam? Like any random things that before you're like, I have to bite my tongue, then now you can get it off your chest? The Santa thing was one of the best running jokes.
Yeah.
They talked about the DC connections with all the Warner, literally they're in a toy store and there's all the Batman and toys and everything around. I thought that was fun. Oh my God! And he picks up the giant Batman thing, and he was like, "Batman, get him!"
it was all DC toys. In
yeah,
there.
well, I mean, if superheroes were real in real life, that makes sense.
What did he say? The Batman toy said something before.
He was like, "Oh, Batman, go!" He's like, "I'm Batman," or something like that.
I wonder if they got Kevin Conway.
Kevin Conroy, that'd be cool.
To do the voice for the I'm Batman.
I'm sure they have that on file somewhere.
Yeah, they probably just pulled it up.
Call him up and be like, hey, can you do Batman's voice? He's like, I've fucking been doing that for 25 years.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that might have been just the toy.
I think the Superman cameo at the end was so underwhelming that I'm like, I almost kind of wish it wasn't even there. The Superman quote cameo or cut off at the neck.
I think it fine. It had a point though. It had a point to it. It's like to show like
don't end your Shazam movie with a hey, Superman's still there too. I'm like, I don't care. I like probably never gonna get a Man.
It was just a way of him trying to make it up to Freddy for
I guess.
going to. So that was another thing.
But then show his face or don't have him there is my kind of thing, you know.
A big thing also was the conflict between Freddy and Billy, and how. He felt that Billy was acting.
You wanted to say that before. That's right.
Yeah, Billy was
being a bully.
Was being a bully because he was being. He had all these powers and everything, and his super abilities
for selfies and stuff.
Go to his head a little bit too much.
Right.
And it ruined their relationship. And so he cast him aside and did the suit, which I also like that the suitcase wedgie, which I also like that
that was funny.
that he did that to the bullies later, Freddy, when he became a Shazam.
Yep.
Did you notice that?
Oh yeah.
I
was like, what is a suitcase wedgie?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
So
yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah, so I liked it a lot.
Not a lot of complaints. I think it's.
That worm thing at the end was weird.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Bring that up. What the fuck was that? What was that? What was that about? I haven't done research yet.
I'm about to bring the 7 rooms together.
I have to find out. That's
dimensions.
I gotta find out what that's about. I was thinking that we see him there. I'm thinking Black Adam's gonna show up, or Jesse Eisenberg, who I forgot to mention when we were talking about BVS earlier. I really like his Lex Luthor. I know I'm in the minority, but I thought it's like Martha. I thought that was all really fun, and so I'm kind of wanting him to come back in a Justice League sequel or something.
Yeah.
I thought maybe he was going to show and be like, "Oh, would you like to be part of our league or something?"
Yeah.
That sounded like the Joker voice, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's kind of a borderline.
I go
played
where
it
you're
little
going with
Jokers.
it, yeah.
So yeah, I got to look into that. And then the little joke at the end, kind of poking fun at Aquaman, I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
I almost expected Jason Momoa to show and be like, "Hey, bro, that's not cool" or something.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, great movie. Check it out. If you listen to this, we already ruined it all for you, but go see Shazam. Anything else?
I concur, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if this is going to hit $1 billion, but maybe it will. It might.
I don't know.
DC's gotten they're like on an upswing now. So
yeah, I love the character development, the characters more than anything else.
Yeah, same. That's what I said earlier. Like the first half hour, I'm like, I don't care if they disappear. These guys are
between
fun.
Darla and the Chinese kid that was screaming,
Eugene.
Yeah, that was screaming.
Hadouken!
He was he? Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I was like, that's I got a big laugh in our theater.
I shouldn't say Chinese. I should say Asian because I don't even know his ethnicity.
No, I think that's Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter.
No, I called him. I called him a Chinese kid.
Yeah, no. I know. I'm saying your Dragon Ball Z reference.
Oh yeah, it was. And how they introduced him was him just screaming at a video game, and how he was saying how he picked up how to hack into federal databases or something by playing these video games, and he picked it up or whatever. Just the character development and the chemistry between the actors and the characters was incredible. So that was one of my favorite things of the whole movie.
Yeah.
It was actually, I felt it was more about that and Billy's story more than it was about the superhero.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you do the work and you create memorable characters that we care about, and you ground their stories in something real and tangible.
Yeah.
We'll buy a wizard who gives a kid random powers from a staff and
it's like
a little dimensional door that takes you into there where there's 7 sin
it's
monsters.
Like the Guardians of the Galaxy
we'll roll with a lot of weird, crazy shit if you make us care about it.
You create that foundation,
right? And this movie did that better than,
like I said before,
all those other ones.
With the DC. They need to create a foundation before they start going into heavy character, multi-plot stories.
Right.
But that's one thing that they did right with Guardians of the Galaxy is that, it's in space and it's all over the place and it's introducing a lot of elements that you wouldn't normally see on screen, talking tree, talking raccoon, all this stuff. But you get that backstory from about Peter Quill at least.
It's just really kind of an underdeveloped man-child who's sad because his mom died when he was a kid, and he's never really dealt with that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so
then,
you have that backstory, and you just build from the character from there, and you can accept everything else. So I think that's something they got right with this as well.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully, whatever the DCEU movies do going forward, that Joker movie notwithstanding, we can count Zachary Levi as part of that now stable cast ensemble with Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot, and then they just got to figure out their Batman and Superman shit.
Yeah, I think they picked a perfect actor for Shazam.
Yeah,
because he's a perfect balance between He has an incredible personality. He has great like expressions, but and that childlike. He adds like that childlike innocence to the character, but he's also like big and strong, and you wouldn't expect that from you wouldn't expect that so much from. Right. So it's just that's also really funny to see like a big like guy acting like a child. Yeah. So that's another comedic element to this.
Yep.
So
good closing thoughts.
Yeah.
So go see Shazam. I think, like Freddie said, it's definitely going to be a big crowd pleaser. So we'll see what happens after opening weekend. And that's it. Thanks for listening to the Crooked Table Podcast. Shazam, and we out.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.